Hello, all. Welcome to another episode of The Manly Catholic. This is James, your host, and today we are interviewing someone that I have interviewed before, which is Shaun McAfee. Now, he's on episode 99. He wrote a wonderful book, Compendium of Sacramentals, that was brought to you by Tan Publishing. And today we're going to discuss another book he just released, actually, and it's All Things Catholic, which is a guide from A to Z. And it really is fascinating. And it seems like, okay, this is a boring book, boring discussion. It's like an encyclopedia, but he does a really good job. He originally, his intention was to write it for apologetics, kind of main topics, things like that, but ended up kind of expanding it into his apologetic topics, but also for the lay Catholic as well, kind of in general. People want to know more knowledge. So we talk things about, Parousia, there's abortion there, topics like yoga as well. So he touches on subjects that maybe you're curious about and you'd like to know more about, but maybe there's subjects that aren't really touched a whole lot about, like racism and things like that. So it's all in this book. Highly recommend it. Shaun is also just a fantastic guy, a great person to talk with, kind of banter back and forth a little bit. But before we get into that conversation, just want to say real quick, first of all, thank you all so much for your prayers. Thank you for your feedback that you guys are giving us and the comments. And Father Dominic cannot say thank you enough for all the work that you guys do in helping us, whether it's praying for us, whether it's supporting us. We cannot say thank you enough. If you are able, we always ask, please, if you can, consider supporting us financially. On our Patreon page, you can get bonus episodes, free coffee if you donate to a certain level, and merchandise in the future, which is coming. I'm also sending to our patrons as well. If you are interested, we have a miraculous medal here as well, a pendant of power that we'll send you all that's already been blessed. So that would be coming to you as well if you support us on the Patreon page. And all the proceeds go right back into the podcast, go out to our priests as well who need us too. So we help with the Father Ripperger exorcist training. We help support that ministry, Mystic Monk Coffee, and all of our priests around the world. They need us. They need our prayers. They need our support in any way that we can help them. Finally, if you can, please hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, please click that little bell so you'll never miss an episode. And to let that AI algorithm know that, yes, this show is, in fact, worth listening to. All right, that's enough of me talking. Let's get into that episode. This is, again, from interview with Shaun McAfee on his newest book, All Things Catholic, A Guide from A to Z. Thank you again so much for listening, and God bless. Hello, all. Welcome to another episode of The Manly Catholic. This is James, your host, and we brought him back, Mr. Shaun McAfee. Shaun, welcome back to The Manly Catholic. How are you, sir?
I'm good. You brought me back reluctantly, I know.
It was not reluctantly, Shaun, because you have a wonderful shirt on. You wrote an amazing book. And Shaun, why don't you tell, for those of us on YouTube who are watching, tell the good people about your shirt.
Oh, gosh, you're mean. Okay, I told him before the show that this is my golf shirt because he said, that's a nice shirt. I said, it's my golf shirt. And he said, oh, you went golfing today? I said, no, I haven't been golfing in like a year and a half. And he's like, then it's not a golf shirt, is it? So, yeah, no.
I mean,
you killed all the
Shaun
mojo.
Too, when I already have somebody on, I feel like after that I can just, gloves are off, we can kind of jab each other and things like that. So
well, the jabs are going
it's
one way right now. Tears.
all in good love, Shaun. Well, for those of you who do not know Shaun, I interviewed him in episode 99, which he wrote another amazing book on the it was a Compendium of Sacramentals. Did I say that correctly?
That's right.
Yes. All right. Compendium of Sacramentals, which is another fantastic book. But we are going to talk about, it's called All Things Catholic, A Guide from A to Z. Now, it is not your typical, what you might think of like, oh, this is just going to be a dictionary. I don't need to get this book. I'm really excited for Shaun to tell you about it too, but I thoroughly enjoyed it because I was telling him before the show too, it was entertaining in a surprising way because, again, you think of a guide from A to Z. Most people see that. I was like, okay, this is going to be a boring book. It's just kind of like, let's go through, the basics, things like that, which you do, but you do in a concise way, a fun way, an entertaining way you give. I like in the little sections you call it a Catholic tip.
Yeah.
And throughout, which is a good little tidbits and food for thoughts for people as well, which I enjoy. But before we get into it, in the background of it, let us ask our Blessed Mother to pray for us. So we'll start in the name of the Father, and the Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God,
Mother of
pray
God,
for
pray
us
for us
sinners, now and at
sinners,
the
now and
hours
at the
of
hour
our
of our
death.
death.
Amen.
Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Tell us, first of all, tell us what has been going on with you besides obviously releasing this book. What's been happening in your life?
I think, this is the reason I haven't been golfing in so long, is I had 2 surgeries since we last talked.
What?
That's like so major, isn't it? Yeah,
Well, now I feel bad about saying that. Oh, man.
Yeah, in
Oh.
December, I think we talked before December. So I had a surgery on my shoulder as an old Air Force injury that I just waited a million years to fix. It's called a tenodesis, and they cut the ligament of your bicep from your shoulder, and they actually drill a hole in your arm, and they plug it into there. They did it. It was successful, quote unquote. I don't know. And then I ripped it like 2 weeks later, right when I first started physical therapy, like a month in. And then they got an ultrasound. I thought that was only for babies, but it's actually to check out muscle tissue. They found that it was like severely torn, and they were like, "How are you not in more pain?" And I was like, "I am. I'm just trying not to be a wimp and a manly Catholic and this and that." And so I I had to do it again in January or February, and dude, it's been a struggle, but I've been doing really good. What is it? The end of May, and I'm doing excellent. I was doing some yard work this week, and I'm feeling strong, but I've still got a long way to go to fully heal my arms. Man, I'm sorry to be all a downer, but that's what's been going on
No.
with me is a lot of
Yeah.
recovery and a lot of just self-analysis. Because I'm going to tell you something. I'll be a little vulnerable here for your listeners, but when you go through that many surgeries and have that much downtime, you can't do anything, and you're all of a sudden not like the family man of the house, taking care of the hard work. Like, it was depressing.
Hmm.
It was so unpredictably difficult to my conscience, that it blew me away. So I am so grateful that I am finally kind of like feeling my feet on wet grass in the morning,
Hmm.
psychologically, and just like in the sunshine. And I'm glad I'm on cloud 9 right now. I'm so happy, and I'm so glad that this book is out. This book was a struggle. So yeah, let's continue the conversation. I'm good.
Oh, thank you for your vulnerability and with that, because I went through something similar after I got fired for my first job after I was married. And same thing, huge depression because you feel like almost like you're disappointing people, especially the ones closest to you. I mean,
Right.
we didn't have children at the time, but yeah, I went through a bout of depression as
Yeah.
well, because then you realize too, I'm sure you kind of had the you said you had a lot of kind of self-reflection too, but you realize when you lose something that you don't realize you've kind of defined yourself as, and then you lose that part, and like, oh, like that, I I took a huge stock in, being that provider and being that physical therapist, or whatever the case might be, and then you realize, oh, okay, my focus was in the wrong place, which I mean, it sucks in the moment, obviously, but I'm sure, like you said, you've come out of it, and you've probably had a whole new lens to look through life and your family and priorities and things like that. So
Totally. Totally,
yeah.
man.
Did you have a Saint Ignatius moment where you came out of it? And I know it wasn't you said it was from the Air Force, so it wasn't a cannon. Was it a cannonball for Saint Ignatius? I
No,
forget. I
man,
forget that.
it's more embarrassing than that.
Okay, we won't go into that. Let's talk about this book. All right, let's talk about this book. So, All Things Catholic, a guide from A to Z. You said it was a struggle for you. Why do you say that?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you the complete story because it doesn't
Let's do it.
matter.
Yes.
So I started this book right in the middle of COVID. I was living in Italy. I got the impetus because I've been online helping people understand the Catholic faith for years, and I've answered the same questions so many times that I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if somebody kind of made a dictionary for apologetics or a dictionary for evangelization, kind of an encyclopedic that could be a little bit practical as well. And I hadn't really seen that in the market. And I do this one thing. I try to write books that I'd like to also have because I'm always thinking like I've got a massive library. That's one bookshelf Okay.
Oh, yes.
That's one
Yes.
bookshelf of 3 or 4 around the house with pretty thick volumes of theology and this and that, and you're sifting through them trying to find the right stuff all the time. And I find that most people really just want one resource for everything. And I said, well, I want to see if I can do that. And this is really ambitious because this required a new style of writing for me. It wasn't just like practical help. That's also in the book, and explaining, that's in the book. But it required really concise and tight defining and consolidation of the magisterium's teaching on close to 300 subjects, about 270 something subjects. And to get through all of that and get it published was a lot of work. It required I mean, every book requires a lot of humility. It requires a lot of rewriting with the editor and rethinking things, and they call it axing your beauties. But this one actually traded publishers. I won't say who it was with the first time, but it got to such a long duration of the editing process. They were like, this no longer matches my schedule. And I was like, oh my gosh, what a hurdle. After all of this, we get to the very end. I've got endorsements from an archbishop, and we're at the end. And how bad of a decision is this? But Sophia took it like within a couple weeks. And that was, I don't know, so many months ago, and we fixed it up to how they like it, and it's way better than I expected it to be. It's way better. I mean, I'm going to hold it up. I'm sorry. I'm a shameless plug, right? I mean, this book's
Do it.
the interview is about the book. First of all, I didn't think that it would be hardcover. They made it hardcover because it's got just so much reusability in it. And then they got full matte pages and color sacred images on every page. And man, they just did it so well. And then, like 4 weeks ago, this isn't a bad part of the story. I've passed all the bad stars. We're in the Alleluia days right now. So, so somewhere a little after Easter, they're like, "Hey, here's the marketing program for it. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to go on the Manly Catholic, and that's pretty much the only thing they were going to do." And they told me that the price of the book was going to be about $20. And I'm like, holy smokes, like you guys are saving people a lot of money. This is definitely, I own 1,000,000 books and I know what's out there. This is at least like a $40, $50 book. I mean, you saw Compendium. This is just on the same level. I mean, it's got this hardcover, it's full matte pages, excellent binding, and then color. And the organization is just exquisite. Holy cow. I'm sorry for the mouthful, but the entire process has been it's been tough, but I mean, all the things that were worth doing in life are hard. So this one is no exception. I'm really proud of it. I'm going to be using it myself, like I said, because everybody needs that. We can talk about the book. Everybody needs that one resource that they can continue to go back to for those sanity checks.
100%. Yeah. Hey, Shaun, my wife needs help with our babies who are crying. Do you mind if we pause very quick?
Pause.
Okay. Time out. I'll be back. Sorry about that. Okay. So you designed this specifically, your intent was for apologetics. So clearly there's thousands of topics on apologetics and the church teaching as well. I mean, because you go from like abortion to the church teaching on private property to I mean, social teaching. I mean, it's so many topics. So how, in your mind, I guess, what was like, yeah, I'm going to put this in. Now I'm going to leave that one out. I mean, because that's hard to do. I mean, especially something like this where you want to have like one-stop shop type of thing. I mean, you can easily see how this is a multi-year project that you underwent.
Yeah. So, I, at the initial outset, I saw the apologetic side as, I'm going to cover the heresies and I'm going to cover the theological concepts. I'm going to cover kind of problems. And that was enough, I suppose, to kind of get started. But I cannot say enough about like opening the doors to the evangelization content. So the development of the topics was really aided by the input of, other readers, editors, of course, people that I ran the content and the ideas by. I would even post stuff on Reddit, secretly trying to gather some people's opinions on these topics. Hey, if you had a problem with marriage, what would be the topics that you would, talk to somebody about, or things like that. So from there, it wouldn't just be the sacrament of marriage that had to be in here, matrimony, but we would be talking about convalidation of marriage, or
Mm.
receiving a annulment or divorce and things like that. So from there, they might seem like obvious things to include in the book, but it really required some analysis and some process of elimination and just consensus gathering, some groupthink to put them all together.
Yeah, that's quite the project that you underdid. And I did want to ask you, because I've never heard this term, so I'm quizzing you on your book,
Oh,
and I'm going to butcher
does
this
it
word.
start with a
It must.
P?
It starts with a no. I'll have to look in the
Okay,
P's.
okay.
It starts with a K. It starts with a K.
Kerygma.
Yeah, kerygma, the proclamation of the. Oh, I'm telling you the definition. I asked you. What's kerygma?
The kerygma is the good news. This is literally the proclaiming of the good news. You can actually find this word in Greek, I believe, in the New Testament. But this is the early church. I mean, it's still a concept today, but this is definitely the early church's mission. The final commandment from Christ, the Great Commission of going and preaching the gospel to all nations. So announcing Jesus Christ's redemptive work on the cross, and that all men are sinful and have a way to be redeemed of that sin, is the really the essence of the kerygma. And we don't just find it in the early church. We find this as recent. I mean, honestly, an enormous volume from Pope Paul VI, called The Mission of the Redeemer, Evangelii Nuntiandi, I believe it's called. And it is just an excellent encyclical that he wrote. He only wrote 11. And this is one of those big, momentous encyclicals that he had on, and he covers mostly the kerygma. Also, Pope Benedict XVI wrote on the Mission of the Redeemer as well, and he talks about the kerygma. So it's not a concept that's lost on deaf ears. It's definitely what we're all called to do, is to proclaim the word of Christ by the way we live our life and by the words that we speak to other people.
What was the first pope that you said,
The
Shaun?
first pope ever? No, that was Pope Paul VI.
Okay, so the P word, I think I found it. And I'm also going to butcher this. Parousia?
Parousia.
Parousia.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, so this is the second coming of Christ. And people kind of think of this as, an eschatological, it's way in the future. But the church actually recognizes the Parousia at Christmas, because it's the first coming of Christ. And really, whenever we're thinking about the first coming of Christ, you'll hear some priests and deacons, right around Christmas, talk about the Parousia, saying, whenever we think of Christmas, we're not just thinking of Jesus, coming once. We're really thinking of him coming for good, to establish his kingdom, to change literally the face of the earth, and to bring all of mankind into final redemption, through there's a lot that has to happen, the four last things, the last judgment, and this and that. But that's the Parousia, is the second coming.
Excellent. Okay, I'll stop quizzing you on your book.
Oh, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, it keeps it fresh, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll find some other words. But I did want to ask you, what for you, again, long project, a lot of research, what was the most surprising thing maybe you found, or the most interesting thing that you're like, oh, even I didn't know that type of moment, if you had one?
I might have to go through the table of contents to give you like the very best answer on that. But the easiest one to say that I had to learn the most on was annulments. And that's just like, I can't even really articulate it right now. That one's so complex because it's a lot of canon law. I'm not a canon lawyer. It's a lot of tribunal processing. It's a lot of circumstantial evidence gathering. And that one is a really complex problem and process to divide that, talk about marriage, talk about divorce, talk about how to recognize how the church chooses to articulate that a marriage never happened is not an easy task, and that's what an annulment is. So that was just really tough. I required a lot of help from some experts and then of course my editors as well. So yeah, that's the one that was like the mind-blowing moment, I'd say.
Yeah, because I think annulments, there tends to be like one or two camps. Either it's the church just gives them out like willy nilly, like it doesn't really mean anything anymore. And then another camp's like, well, even though I'm Catholic, I can just get an annulment. So it's like it's easy to get type of thing. Or that goes through the people's minds. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot of nuances because, establishing, was there actually a valid marriage? Was it consummated properly? Things like that. I mean, there's just so many
Right.
layers, and I'm sure it's like
Mental
a lot.
state and
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
consent
which
and wow. I
right.
mean, how do you even? I mean, it's like we got to think of our wives when it comes to this thing because I don't know about your wife, but most women can always like they have an exciting memory and men don't. And it's like,
Yeah,
where were you on March
right.
20th, 1999? And they have to literally like go back and establish all these facts and really kind of, I mean, it's literally a court of law. So yeah, it's
Right.
tough. So that one was difficult to get right without leading people astray and just saying what the book really needed it to say while not kind of underserving the topic.
Right. I did want to ask you because I've never asked on the podcast about this, but I think it's something that I think may also be misconstrued. But yoga, and because I saw that was in your book, and again, it's like, well, it's harmless. It's just stretching and things like that. But yoga also has obviously religious implications as well, especially certain types of yoga. Do you mind if we dive into that a little bit? Because
Not
I
at
think
all.
it's another concept that or topic that can be controversial amongst Catholics too, and where it's like it's not a big deal. I'm not like inviting myself up for anything, but then you talk to exorcists too, who say you better watch what kind of instructor you're going through, like the third eye and stuff like that too, because you can kind of be treading on dangerous territory there. So, do you mind just kind of sharing what you know about it, and we can kind of have a back and forth with that?
Sure. There's not enough that can be said about this, but then I can try to put it as concisely as I possibly can.
Yeah.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with an ascetic lifestyle. There's nothing wrong with fitness and all the ways that you can be fit. There's nothing, and so the marriage of the fitness lifestyle and the ascetic lifestyle, which is hopefully through prayer, are certainly Christian things. We find in the tradition of the saints. I mean, Saint Simon Stylites, he sat on a pillar for like 40 years. We know of, the Counter Reformation saints, even Pope John Paul II. His biographers have known him for pounding his flesh, in the words of Saint Paul. And so the ascetic lifestyle is not lost on Catholics, and yoga, those athletic, balancing your body with the stretches of it can be quite intense. Anybody who's done those workouts knows that it's not just downward dog and stretching your back. I mean, there's some real heavy lifting of your own supported weight in awkward positions that creates an excellent strength and endurance. But okay, so there's my preamble, but I will tell you, you said implications. Yoga is a religious implication. It is a religious workout. It is a sacred item to an Eastern religion called, that's Buddha and what's the other one? There's Buddhism and the
Hindu.
Hindu and the Baha'i. They all take on this religion of karma and this aura of the person that's within the person, and that's really what yoga is based around. It's not just becoming strong and building endurance and this and that so you can do your yard work. It's and have a healthy lifestyle. It's literally I'm centered on me and I'm the center of my universe, and everything else around me is kind of a placated reality. And that's really what that whole sensation and that whole, that religious aspect of it is built around. And what does that do? That removes God from that person's psyche, from that person's approach to their own religion, and that's of course counter-Christian. That doesn't jive well with what Catholicism preaches, what Christianity preaches, which is our master of the universe is God, and he is an actual person, and the universe around us is created, it is physical. So we don't believe in this dualistic. The yoga has a lot of principles that are deeply rooted in Eastern religion, pagan religion, and they're very harmful to what Catholics know and believe. So if we want to be good Catholics, if we want to be good Christians, we will stray from that. Now, there are excellent. You said this would be a back and forth. I'm taking all the time. There are excellent alternatives. One of them is Pietra, which means like on the rock.
Is that like Catholic yoga?
It's like
Not
Catholic.
Catholic yoga,
Yeah,
but
it's
Catholic
a Catholic alternative to
fitness.
yoga. I mean, it's all
Okay.
the kind of the same stuff. But otherwise, I would say that people should be really careful, like you said. The exorcists, they say, be careful of who you do it with. Just doing the exercises in your backyard, if you call it downward dog, fine. But doing the namaste
Right.
pose and doing the meditations and whatnot that go with it out of some sort of sutra book that teaches you those positions, that is not that doesn't jive well with Catholicism, and eventually those lead to error, at least a really poor worldview that doesn't jive with it. So we ought to be on the guard on those sorts of things, and there's alternatives to that.
Yeah, 100%. And I remember a story too. This just came to me when I don't know which exorcist I was listening to, but he was recounting a story when it was actually this older woman who her husband died, and I think for a couple years. But basically, her husband, what she thought was her husband, appeared to her in their bedroom, and it was a demon that she, widow, grieving widow, things like that. What she thought was her husband asked, "Can I get into bed with you?" And she said yes. And for us, again, that would seem like a very harmless thing to do, but in the demonic world, in the spiritual world, that one yes opened herself up to demonic, would end up being demonic obsession. She wasn't possessed or anything, but this demon wouldn't leave her alone, and then finally she went to see a priest, and she was liberated from it. But again, like you might think you're doing something innocent or innocuous, things like that. People mess around with Ouija boards.
Right.
Sometimes nothing comes of it, but a lot of times that one yes, you agree to it, you're inviting the spiritual realm. When all exorcists again say, especially with the Ouija board, there's nothing good coming out from a Ouija board. It's only evil spirits that are responding to that kind of stuff. So even if what you think is innocent, be careful with what you are getting yourself into, especially if you're unsure of, because there's Eastern medicinal practices too that I know
Right.
can be very on edge with Catholics too as well, because again, it's not the thing in and of itself, but it's what is it's attached to, right? So even what you said, yoga, in your book, it says yoga formally belongs to the Hindu religion as a means of using bodily positions of strain mixed with relaxation to grow in spiritual, quote unquote mindfulness. And then various yoga disciplines help the Hindu achieve, I'm gonna butcher it, moksha, or union with the divine, all-encompassing life force known as Brahman or Brahman.
Yeah.
So again, it's what you're inviting yourself into,
Right.
and again, it's very self-centered,
Right.
becoming a god, becoming divine within yourself, finding your inner self. I think, are they the third eye? Is that yoga, or am I
I believe that's
mixing
yoga.
things up?
Yeah,
I forget.
that's Hindu.
Okay. Yeah, so same things. Just again, a book like this too, because you talk about Mormonism as well, kind of brief on that, Protestantism, some of the heresies, like you say too, Theotokos, which is, the mother of God, Mary, mother of God. So I can't recommend this enough, Shaun. I mean, I'm really impressed even just flipping through it. Again, the imagery in it is beautiful. Again, I love the Catholic tips that you put in. It's just was that just kind of your little insert that you wanted to add, or
Yeah.
because they're really helpful? It's almost like a little anecdote to dive deeper into certain topics
Yeah,
that you
I
want
felt
to talk
like
about.
on a lot of topics, I got through the kind of body that made all of these really identical and consistent, but then I wanted to say just a little bit more just to be helpful. I've got the further reading and, more discovery in each one of these sections, but the Catholic tip was really my either personal experience or just abbreviated experiences of others and how to be successful with these topics. So if it's Mormonism, it's hey, here's how to engage Mormons. Here's something they're sensitive about. Or if it's yoga, I don't think we had one in there about yoga. It's either something about evangelism or apologetics, or just practical life tips, or how to go about seeking this in a matter of devotion, because we want people to understand these things. But great, you got the gee whiz, but I really want, personally, I want others to want a desire to immerse themselves in a life that's going to sanctify them. And that's really why we're Catholic. So if it's all the things Catholic, it's all the things sanctifying.
Absolutely, amen to that. Now, I want to ask you too, When you put a book together like this, what was the one that excited you the most? Like
The
one
easy
that,
ones.
well, maybe a topic that you knew about, but I know you talked about annulments, but maybe you knew about, but then you dove in. It's like, oh, this is even more in depth and more fascinating than I realized.
Yeah.
Something that like you got and it's like, oh, I want to actually after this, I want to dive deeper into that because this kind of sparked my interest with
I
it.
think the social ones,
Okay.
euthanasia, abortion, transgenderism, treatment of the dead, end of life issues. There are so many in here. And that's what I think sets this book apart is it's not just an encyclopedia. These are topics you won't find in any Catholic encyclopedia. I mean, probably very few people are brave enough to, explore all of those very difficult and touchy subjects, and put the slap of the church's definition on them if it's there. So those were easily the ones that I was like, I got to get these right. And it wasn't like easy to write. I mean, you said excited. I'm not sure if I was excited, but I definitely was honing all of my skills and effort in on those to be sure that those touchy subjects were dealt with well, that they were encouraging, but also we didn't waste any mincing of words trying to dance around difficult topics.
Yeah, again, you're right. It is something too. I think a lot of Catholics steer away from. You have one on racism and
Right.
like you said, like
Immigration.
euthanasia and immigration. Again, these are things that are very prominent in our day nowadays, especially with an election coming up. Lord have mercy on us come November. But it's things that we do need to talk about because I think if we pretend that they don't exist, that's actually what makes the divide even bigger. And versus if we talk about it, we have a good understanding of it. Again, there are certain things that the church may not definitively define it, but they give us principles and guidelines in order to have a productive conversation
Yeah.
with it as well.
Like
So,
yoga.
I,
Yoga, the church is pretty silent on it, but we've got
yeah,
our sensibilities and a magisterium that gives us enough wisdom to be sure of what our left and right boundaries are, so we can kind of play with those and talk about those subjects with some accuracy and definitely some cool heads.
do you talk about? I couldn't see it, but I might have missed it. Like drugs, like marijuana,
Actually, no,
alcohol,
I don't
church
talk
teaching
about
on that. Okay,
substances. No, maybe that would have been a good
okay.
idea. Yeah,
You know what? Second edition
you're
coming
right,
at you.
exactly. I'm always taking
Because
suggestions.
well, because then too, it's because I mean, alcohol is touchy subject. Marijuana because it's legal now mostly in a lot of states. And kind of what is the fine line? Because I've heard Catholic sides both for and against. Like, well, it's fine, as long as it's medicinal, or it's fine as long as you're not unpaired and things like that. But it is touchy subject for a lot of people, and I think it would be helpful. So, just adding a little plug for you there, Shaun,
Yeah,
for your second edition there.
I'd probably immediately point to Noah. I mean, Noah's sin was,
Oh
not,
gosh,
I mean, his sin
yes.
was drunkenness. So it wasn't just
Yeah,
a matter of having consumed alcohol. It was giving his body and his mind over to something other than himself, a substance. And
right.
so, when we allow our conscience and our behavior to be manipulated by these things that, yes, God created, but aren't sought in moderation. I mean, that can be done with anything. I mean, you can literally overdose on oxygen and water. And that can kind of be a sin if you
Yeah.
don't treat your body as a temple. Um, yeah, that would be a wonderful topic. You're right. I failed. I should have included it, Jim. No, I'm just kidding.
You know what? We're gonna take the book back and we're gonna redo it
Yeah,
all
send
again,
it
right?
back.
Well, Shaun, where can our listeners get the book? Where can they find out more about you? And any other parting thoughts for our listeners?
I say this in earnest. Please go to your local Catholic bookstore and ask them to order this book. Supporting those is the backbone of the American economy, those small businesses, and of course, when you support those
Amen.
Catholic bookstores, you're supporting families. So please do that. Otherwise, go to Amazon or SophiaInstitute.com or anywhere Catholic books are sold, Barnes and Noble or Catholic communities and whatnot.
Barnes and Noble, are they still selling Catholic books?
Absolutely, they have this one. Isn't that cool?
Do they
They
really?
have most of my books. You can order through them. Yeah.
Wow. You made it, Shaun. You made it on the Barnes and Noble's
I
bookshelf.
don't know if it's going to be on their bookshelf, but it's definitely within their catalog.
You know what? That's all that really matters, Well, hey, Shaun, thank you so much for coming on. It's always a blast having you on. We'll have to have you on when you write another book.
Thank you.
Coming at you. Do you have any in the works, by the way, or can you not announce that?
I can. It's fine.
Any
It's
ideas?
fine. They're for your kids. I'll just say that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, did you write a book on video games, or did we talk about that
I
last
wrote a
time?
book on social media. It's called Social Media Magisterium. We didn't really talk about video games. I would love to write a book on video games. That'd be really fun.
We should have you back on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about video games.
Yes.
That could be a touchy subject too for people.
Sure. Yeah, that's an
because
addiction for some.
temperance.
Yep.
Yeah, I was totally addicted growing up as a kid. I was, Call of Duty. I was into the sports games a lot too.
Awesome.
But yeah, so we'll have to bring you back on and talk about that.
Okay.
It's a little teaser. But yeah, everyone, I will leave links in the show notes for the book, where to purchase it on Sophia, a couple of the encyclicals that Shaun mentioned as well, and we will. Yeah, anything else that Shaun wants me to add, I will make sure to put some links in there. But until next time, go out there and be a saint.